Good morning, everyone. This is Luciana Turner coming to you with this morning's edition of the Chatter Project. I am your host. I am the founder of the LT&A Company. We are an all-encompassing government contracting, training, and consulting firm. We also do government contract work. I am a government compliance specialist. I have done worked in the industry, including my nonprofit days, since the year 2000. So, welcome to my episode, my live. As you come into the room, you know how we was raised. You say hello, and so I can greet you. If you're catching this by the replay, hashtag replay, so I can acknowledge that you stopped by. So we are officially 8 days from the new government fiscal year. And the biggest news in the government space is the debt ceiling. There is a bill that narrowly passed the House to raise the debt ceiling, or actually suspend it, so that the government doesn't shut down and that we can pay our creditors. Looks like it's going to be a fight in the Senate. They need at least 10 Republicans to get on board to pass it. The Republicans' concern, and this isn't a political platform whatsoever. However, this conversation is important to government contractors because it affects funding for contracts and the flow of funding. So if you're a government contractor, you need to keep your eye on appropriations, debt ceilings, and any conversation of that nature, because it affects funding, it affects the flow of funding, it affects appropriations and the obligation, deobligation, and reobligation of funds within the government. So if there's an active contract and the government needs to pay another obligation, it could reobligate funds from a current initiative to a more pressing initiative. And if your contract is deemed not as important as another contract or another government initiative, your contract could be halted, or your contract could be canceled altogether. And the way they do that is through a process called a stop work. And a stop work, if you read the language within the RFP and your contract, they don't have to give you 30 days notice. They typically give you 60 days if they know that far in advance. And a good contracting officer who keeps their eyes and ears open and who attends all of his meetings the way he should can give you a heads up 90 days in advance that things are going on. And I'm going to get back to my original point, but I'm going to drop this knowledge. A good contracting officer can give you as much as 120 days notice that there may be funding issues. In the back end, now I wasn't a part of those groups. However, I was in an area when I was in industry where I heard certain conversations. And in hearing those conversations, there was always someone, program manager, project manager, who kept their eyes on appropriation. So they were always able to forecast a funding issue, and they had a plan in place in the event of. Because here's the thing, typically a stop workage most times does not lead to a complete contract cancellation. It doesn't. However, you still have a staff, you still have employees that aren't working. And what are you going to do with those people? You don't want to fire them or lay them off, because the likelihood of them getting other work, because who's going to just sit around and not get paid while all of that works out. When you look at the numbers, the average American is living paycheck to paycheck. It's a sad state of the world. So they can't afford to just wait around until the contract starts again. And it's expensive and timely to recruit new people, then bring them up to speed on the contract work. So you have to have a plan in place in case there is a stop workage. So you need to be aware of things such as debt ceilings. You need to be aware of things such as these conversations around suspending the debt ceiling. Will the government go into a lockdown? How do you plan on adjusting your workforce? Do you have a plan? Will your insurance policy cover the salaries for your employees on that contract during that time period? Because typically the average government shutdown is only 60 days until they figure it out. And you need to cover those payroll for 60 days. Well, 90 days, because you work in a whole 30 days until you get paid again. These are the things government contractors should stay aware of. These are the things that should stay on your radar. And I want you to be aware or cognizant of all of these issues. So back to the original point, which is why this is important, and is why this is a conversation on this platform. So right now, I believe it passed the House. It's going to Senate. They need Republicans. I believe they need 10 Republicans to get on board in order for it to pass Senate. So far, it looks like it isn't going to happen. The senators are concerned that if they get on board with this, because if this doesn't pass, the budget, which I believe is at 3.9 trillion with a T, isn't going to pass. We're 8 days away from the new government fiscal year. So the Republicans are concerned if they suspend the debt ceiling with no plan in place for reinstating it, with no plan in place to rein all the spending in and to recoup the cost, this country is going to go into a fiscal spending spree and tank, which is a valid concern. However, we can't allow the government to shut down and not pay its bills. So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. What do I see? I see one of these midnight compromises coming through. I see it getting passed. I see a whole lot of people shaking their heads, being upset with something that they're going to have to get on board with they don't like. And a lot of people are like, well, they shouldn't pass it. Well, it's either fiscal ruin down the road or it's fiscal ruin now. If we push it off a couple of years, we have a chance to course correct. If we do it now, then we don't have a chance to course correct. That's the way I see it. I'm not a guru, but I'm utilizing my strategic mind. That's the way I see it. It will all pass. Friday at midnight, it's going to pass. They're going to pass that package that's going to include funding for the restoration, temporary removal, suspension of the debt ceiling. Then next week, they're going to pass the budget. And October 1st, we're going to have a nice new government budget. And all this money is going to go flowing into the economy. I was just looking at some RFPs out there because, quite like I said, I am a government contractor. And there are a lot of workforce development opportunities out there. So if you have a training firm, this is your time. If you're looking at state level work, this is your time. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of work in the WIC EBT program where they're trying to transition people into the workforce. If that is your calling, this is the time to get in on that and really make an impact in society if that's your calling. If you're one of the people who see a need to help raise people out of poverty and to move the needle, and people define poverty differently, we're going with the government's definition of poverty. If that is your calling, there are RFPs on the street now on the state level. I know when I did my search yesterday, I pulled up over 400 within a three-state area. And I pulled up 400 RFPs. So there isn't a lack of work. So this is a time, if you want to make social impact, you can make a social impact. Here's the thing. Government contracting has gotten a bad rap because there are a few bad actors. You're well-intentioned. My pastor said something last night, and I thought it was epic. You don't allow someone else's bad intentions put a bad light on your good intentions. And government contracting, for some reason, has a bad light to some people. People want to say government contractors are bad. They want to vilify them. People have an issue with the DoD spending budget. We can feed the hungry with all that money. I know somebody who works with the homeless in Philadelphia. Well, he worked with the homeless. He passed away. So he's not working with anybody right now. And that summer that I spoke with him and that I spent with him really opened my eyes to the homeless issue. And a lot of people give, platitudes about the homeless and the plight of homelessness, but that's all it is. It's a whole lot of lip service, but there's very few boots on the ground. Well, here's time to get boots on the ground. It's time to stop sitting around pontificating and really take action. And government contracting is a way to do it. The government cannot, and I don't believe the government should, be your rescue. However, the government can be a tool for funding the rescue. Because with all the money that is paid into the tax system, that funding, in theory, the tax system is designed to create revenue to help build the infrastructure for the people. Well, then get the grant writing, get the proposal writing. You do not have to be a nonprofit to apply for a contract to do workforce development, EBT assistance. A lot of these contracts do not require you to be a nonprofit. So that's a misnomer, and that is a misunderstanding. However, a lot of the grants that are out there do require you to be a 501(c). That is the difference. So instead of saying I can't go for this work because I'm not a nonprofit, actually look and see what's out there before you disqualify yourself. Look what's out there and see what's available and see what you qualify for. Because you do not have to go through the pain of setting up, and I shouldn't use the term the pain. You don't have to go through the steps of setting up a nonprofit to do this work, because there are contracts out there that do not require you to be a 501(c)(3 to do the workforce development, the EB, and all of that work. You don't have to be a nonprofit to do it. There are ones that do require it, but there's plenty that don't. And I'm going to close out today's session with this thought. We're 8 days from the start of the fiscal year. And I'm going to ask you a question. Have you built your contractor's library? Do you have your references and resources available? Do you understand what it takes to be successful in government contracting? Do you understand the inner workings of government contracting? Do you have a contracting strategy, or are you just really going to shoot in the dark? If the answer to any of these questions, if the answer to that last question is yes, I really need to get on my calendar for a discovery session. Government contracting, if you truly want to be successful, you need a strategy and you need a plan. Get on my calendar. Let's have a 15-minute conversation so we can plan out your contracting success. And with that, I invite you to join me tomorrow morning at 8:15 a.m. for another installment of the Chatter Project. I'm Luciana Turner. I am your host, and have a great and marvelous day.